Life is a Mercury dream, fluid, reflective, and constantly changing right before your eyes in a burst of silver light. Dive into these ever-shifting stories of the human heart and find your own reflection in our cinematic art. Hit subscribe now and follow the flow today.
Fork was halfway to my mouth when my phone lit up on the table. My mother had made pot roast. She'd been slow cooking it since that morning. I could smell it the second I pulled into the driveway, that deep, savory smell that takes me back to being 12 years old and doing homework at the kitchen counter while she hummed along to whatever was playing on the old radio above the fridge. My dad was talking about the neighbor's new truck, something about the engine size. I wasn't really listening, just nodding, cutting into the meat, comfortable in the way you only get comfortable in the house you grew up in. Then my phone lit up. The number wasn't saved. Not a contact, not a local area code I recognized, just a string of digits and 2 sentences below it. Don't react to this message. Get up and walk outside. I put the fork down slowly. My dad was still talking. My mom had gotten up to bring the bread from the oven. I stared at the screen and read it again. Don't react. Walk outside. 7 words. No explanation. No name. No context at all. The first thing I thought was, wrong number. Obviously, someone texted the wrong person and didn't realize it. I almost typed back, "I think you meant someone else," and went back to my pot roast. But something stopped me. I don't know how to explain it except to say that the message didn't read like a mistake. There was no casual tone to it, no hey at the front, no lowercase rambling. It was direct, almost clinical, and it was specific. Don't react. Which meant whoever sent it knew I was somewhere I couldn't react. Knew I was with people. Knew that if I startled or stood up fast or made a face, it would be noticed. My chest got tight. My mom came back with the bread and set it in the center of the table and asked my dad if he wanted butter. I smiled. I don't know where the smile came from. Some autopilot version of me took over while the rest of me sat behind my eyes trying to figure out what was happening. My phone was face up on the table. My mom glanced at it the way moms do, not reading it, just registering that it existed, and I turned it over casually. Too casually, maybe, but she'd already moved on, was already passing the bread to my dad, and he was already saying something about the neighbor again. A second message came through. I felt the vibration against the tablecloth. I waited a full 30 seconds before I turned the phone back over. You are not in immediate danger right now, but you need to leave the house. Use the back door. Do not say where you're going. My hands went cold. I looked up at my parents. My dad was buttering his bread. My mom was refilling her water glass from the pitcher she keeps on the table. They looked so completely normal, so completely unaware. And I was sitting there with a phone in my lap that was telling me to sneak out of their house through the back door without telling them where I was going. The thing is, I almost didn't do it. There's a part of your brain that refuses to believe something serious is happening when you're surrounded by ordinary things. Pot roast. Bread. Your dad talking about a Ford F-150. The kitchen light that's been slightly too yellow ever since they switched to LED bulbs 2 years ago. These things make you feel safe. These things make anonymous text messages from unknown numbers feel like paranoia or a prank or a wrong number after all. But then the third message came. I know this is frightening. I can't call you. Please trust me. Use the back door and walk to the end of the street. Someone will meet you there. Someone will meet you there. I set the phone face down on my thigh and picked my fork back up. Put a piece of carrot in my mouth and chewed it. Swallowed it. I have no idea what it tasted like. You okay, honey? My mom was looking at me. Just tired, I said. Long week. She gave me that look, the one that means I see through you, but I'll let it go for now, and turned back to my dad. He was asking if she'd noticed the new fence the neighbors had put up along the property line, and she had an opinion about it, and they slipped back into the comfortable current of their conversation, and I sat there and made a decision. I was going to get up. I was going to say I needed some air, or that I was going to grab something from my car, or that I needed to use the bathroom and would be back in a second. I was going to walk through the kitchen, through the back hallway, out the door that opens onto the small patio where my dad keeps his grill covered in a canvas tarp from October through April, and I was going to walk down the alley to the end of the street, and I was going to trust a stranger. Actually, I said, pushing my chair back, I left my cardigan in the car. I've been cold all day. I'm just going to run and grab it. My mom started to say something about there being a blanket in the hall closet, and I said I knew. I'd be 2 seconds. I liked my cardigan better. I kept my voice normal. I kept my face normal. I walked through the living room, turned left into the kitchen, and then instead of going toward the front door, I kept going. Down the short hallway, past the bathroom, past the framed photos my mom has had on that wall since I was in elementary school. I pushed open the back door and stepped outside. The air hit me immediately. It was colder than I expected. One of those early November evenings where the temperature drops fast once the sun goes down. The patio was dark. The grill was covered in its tarp. The motion sensor light above the door clicked on, and I stood there in the sudden brightness, feeling completely exposed, completely visible, completely unsure of what I had just walked into. I texted back, "I'm outside." The response came within seconds. "Good. Stay calm. Walk toward the street. Don't run. Try to look like you're just taking a walk." I pulled my sleeves down over my hands. I hadn't brought my cardigan, obviously, that had been the excuse, and I walked across the patio, through the small gate at the back of the yard, and into the alley that runs behind the row of houses on my parents' street. The alley was quiet. Just garbage cans. A dog barking somewhere a few houses down. The orange glow of the streetlight at the far end. I walked toward it. I walked toward it. I want to tell you that I was brave, that I walked calmly and purposefully and didn't once think about turning around, running back inside, locking the door, and pretending the whole thing hadn't happened. But that would be a lie. About halfway down the alley, my legs went heavy. I stopped walking. I stood between 2 garbage cans in the dark and genuinely considered whether I was the most gullible person alive. What if this was a scam? What if it was a setup? What if I just left my parents inside and walked myself directly into something terrible because someone with a blocked number had sent me 3 vague text messages? My phone buzzed again. "I can see you stopped. You're almost there. I promise you're safe. Please keep walking." They could see me. Whoever this was, they were close enough to see me standing in that alley. That should have terrified me further. And part of me was terrified. But another part of me registered something in that message that the other messages had also had, some quality I couldn't quite name. There was no threat in it. There was no aggression. Just calm, steady, almost gentle insistence. "I promise you're safe. Please keep walking." I kept walking. At the end of the alley, where it opens onto the side street, a dark sedan was parked against the curb with the engine running. As I got closer, the passenger window rolled down. The woman inside looked like someone's aunt. Late 50s, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, wearing a fleece zip-up over a collared shirt. She held up a badge. "I'm so sorry for the way we had to do this," she said. "I'm a detective with the county sheriff's office. Are you Eleanor Marsh's daughter?" I don't know what I said. Something. "Yes, probably." "Get in, please. I'll explain everything." I got in. Her name was Detective Souza. She'd been parked on my parents' street for 2 hours. There was another unit parked 1 block over. She explained it to me methodically, the way someone does when they've had to explain difficult things to frighten people many times before and have learned that clarity is a kindness. 6 weeks earlier, my parents' house had come up in an investigation into a local burglary ring. Not because my parents had done anything wrong, they hadn't, but because their house fit a specific profile the ring had been targeting. Older couple, lived their long-term, regular patterns. The ring had been responsible for 11 home invasions in the county over the past 4 months. 3 of them had turned violent. The sheriff's office had been tracking the ring's movements for weeks. That afternoon, they'd intercepted communication that suggested my parents' house was the next target. That night, during dinner. "We knew the family would be inside," Detective Souza said. "We didn't want anyone in that house when they made entry. But we also couldn't tip them off by having units visible on the street. They've been surveillance savvy. They've walked away from jobs before when something felt wrong." "My parents," I said. My voice came out flat. "You left my parents in that house." She looked at me steadily. "Your parents were never unprotected. We had an officer inside the house before you arrived for dinner. Positioned in the utility room off the kitchen. Your parents don't know that. I stared at her. We needed the house to look occupied and normal, she said. We needed activity through the windows. We also needed to reduce the number of people at risk in the event of a confrontation. You were the one we could move without disrupting the visual from outside. She paused. You have a habit of stepping out to your car multiple times during visits. We knew it would read as normal. They had been watching long enough to know my habits. How did you get my number? I asked. Your mother has a notepad by the kitchen phone. Your number's written on it. Old habit. A lot of people your parents' age still keep written numbers even if they're also in their cell phones. A small, almost apologetic shrug. We photographed the notepad when we were setting up earlier. I sat in that car and tried to hold all of it at once. The pot roast. My dad and the neighbor's truck. My mom's look across the table, the 3 text messages, the alley, the darkness, all of it assembling into a shape I could barely hold. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait, she said, and you stay here. We didn't wait long. 40 minutes maybe. I sat in the passenger seat of Detective Souza's car, and she offered me coffee from a thermos, and I took it, even though I don't really drink coffee, because I needed something to do with my hands. She didn't make small talk. She monitored her radio. She answered a few messages on her phone. She was calm in a way that I found myself trying to absorb. Like maybe if I sat close enough to that calmness, it would conduct into me. At some point, she sat up straighter, spoke quietly into the radio. Got a response I couldn't fully make out. They've made contact with the property, she said. I don't know what I expected to happen next. Something dramatic. Shouting maybe, or the sound of something breaking, but from where we were parked, I couldn't hear anything. I just watched the street, and then, within a few minutes, 2 more vehicles appeared at the far end of the block, unmarked, moving slowly. A 3rd one from the other direction. It's done, Detective Souza said. Her radio crackled again. She listened, then let out a slow breath. 2 in custody. House is clear. Your parents are fine. I pressed my hands flat against my thighs. Your parents are fine, she said again, like she understood I needed to hear it twice. They walked me back to the house a few minutes later. My parents were in the living room with 2 officers. My mother stood up when she saw me and crossed the room faster than I've seen her move in years and put her arms around me without saying anything. My dad stood up too, slower, and then he put his hand on my back, and the 3 of us just stood there in the middle of their living room while the officers talked quietly near the door. Later, after the officers had gone and the 3 of us were sitting in the kitchen, the pot roast still on the stove. Cold now, the bread still in its basket, my mom kept saying she hadn't heard anything. She'd been in the house with an officer she hadn't known was there, eating dinner, completely unaware. She felt shaken by that. I understood why. The idea that something that's serious had been assembling itself right outside the windows of a room that felt so safe, so ordinary. It changes the feeling of ordinary rooms. My dad was quieter. He sat with his coffee and looked at the table and finally said, "Thank God you listened." That's the part I keep coming back to. I almost didn't. I sat at that table for a long moment after the first message and talked myself back from the edge of ignoring it. The pot roast was good. The house was warm. My parents looked fine. Everything looked fine. And a message from an unknown number telling you to sneak out the back door and walk down a dark alley to meet a stranger is, on its face, something you should probably not do. But there was something in those messages, some quality, the steadiness of them, the absence of urgency as manipulation, the way they gave me information instead of just commands. You are not in immediate danger right now. That's not how a threat talks. That's how someone trying not to frighten you talks. I promise you're safe. People who are trying to lure you somewhere don't usually promise you safety. They promise something else, something you want. I've turned it over in my mind a lot since that night. Whether I made the right call, whether it was smart or lucky or some combination of both, whether a different version of me, one who was more skeptical, one who trusted her gut less, might have stayed at the table and ignored those messages and had a very different evening. I don't have a clean answer to that. I'm not sure there is one. What I know is this. The woman at the end of that alley was trying to help me. The calm in those messages was real. And sometimes the most important thing you can do in a frightening moment is resist the urge to perform normalcy so hard that you miss the one person who's trying to reach you. My mom reheated the pot roast 2 nights later. We sat at the same table. My dad talked about the neighbor's truck again. Apparently, there had been a development with the towing capacity that he found significant. My mom refilled the water glass from the same pitcher. It looked exactly the same. It didn't feel exactly the same. I don't think it will for a while. But I sat there and ate the pot roast and listened to my dad and looked across the table at my mom and thought, we're here. All three of us. We're here and we're fine, and that is the whole thing. That is everything. I still think about the moment I almost put the phone down and went back to my pot roast. That's the part no one tells you about close calls. They don't announce themselves. They arrive disguised as ordinary evenings. A warm kitchen. Your dad talking about a truck. Your mom passing the bread. And somewhere underneath all that comfort, something is moving toward you that you can't see yet. What stopped me from ignoring those messages wasn't bravery. I want to be honest about that. It was something quieter, a kind of paying attention I'd spent years trying to practice without even knowing I was practicing it. Reading a situation for what it actually was, not for what I wanted it to be. That takes a certain kind of clear-headedness, the sort that doesn't come from being fearless, but from being willing to sit with fear long enough to think straight through it. Detective Souza had that quality in abundance. 3 calm text messages, no manipulation, no false urgency, just information and a request. I recognized it, maybe because I'd been trying to build that same quality in myself. The ability to communicate clearly under pressure, to be steady when everything around you is not. There's a cause and effect to how that night unfolded that I've turned over many times since. The ring had been targeting houses for months. They'd been successful because people weren't watching, weren't warned, or given the chance to respond. The night they came to my parents' house, a chain of small, deliberate choices interrupted that pattern. Someone noticed. Someone decided to act. Someone trusted a stranger enough to deliver a warning instead of staying quiet. And I, sitting at that dinner table with cold hands and a face I was working hard to keep neutral, decided to trust that warning instead of dismissing it. Every one of those decisions required something. The officer who positioned herself in my parents' utility room, that required a kind of quiet courage. Showing up and staying. Knowing what might come through the door. Detective Souza, parked 2 hours on a dark street, that required patience and commitment to something bigger than her own comfort. And me, walking down that alley in the dark toward a car I'd never seen. That required me to push through the part of my brain screaming that this was foolish and keep moving anyway. I think about my parents a lot in this context. They sat at that table and had no idea. They were protected by people they never knew were there, by systems working in the background, by a daughter who got a strange text and after a long, frightening moment of doubt, chose to listen to it. They didn't have to do anything, but the fact that they're okay, the fact that we all sat around that same table 2 nights later eating reheated pot roast while my dad talked about towing capacity, that outcome wasn't random. It was built out of a series of people doing the right thing in small, unglamorous ways when it would have been easier not to. That's what I keep coming back to. Not the drama of it, not the cars and the radio and the 2 in custody, just the idea that integrity, real, quiet, unsexy integrity, is usually what's standing between ordinary life and something much worse. You don't see it until after. But it was there the whole time. My mom reheated the pot roast because she wanted us to have the dinner back. I understood that. Some things you reclaim just by sitting down together and finishing what you started. We're here. That's the whole thing. We're here.